What's up everyone? Before we continue, let me reminisce about the good old days, when things were still simple. Being a YouTuber is sort of like playing an RPG. First, you choose a character, which is like choosing the overall subject matter of your channel. In my case that's combat sports. Next, you slowly start building up experience points by making videos. Along the way, you acquire more skills to make your character more powerful. Hopefully, if things work out, you level up. If all else fails, you fork out some cash so that you can tell your friends you leveled up like an ace. Now, like any good RPG, combat is a key part of gameplay. Wandering into dungeons is a dangerous but necessary activity for character development. Having played for years now, I am no stranger to dungeon combat. But recently, the creatures I am encountering are like none other. Previously, all my battles can be described as clan warfare amongst the various grappling factions. The various groups are pretty well understood and ultimately no one is out to obliterate the other. This new creature though, I suspect spawns from a small segment of my new audience. They sort of remind me of the demonstration partners that you often see in dim mock death touch videos. This new creature seems highly prone to suggestion, and appears to have rudimentary, if any, combat skills. Most recently, I waged war with one of the more esoteric factions of my niche. Though often ridiculed for their alternative beliefs and lifestyle, I still operated under the assumption that the particular individual I was battling had a pretty good understanding of martial arts as a practitioner. In fact, I'm pretty sure that the person behind that avocado-looking avatar would still hold her own against one of these new creatures in a grappling situation. Making things even more confusing, these creatures also seem to want to use the same player skin, which makes it feel like I'm battling a Jar Jar Binks army. If pandering to a Jar Jar Binks battalion is the only way to bring peace to the land, I'd rather join the dark side. At least stormtroopers know how to use a blaster. Anyways, this is where the poll results are at the moment. Do remember to vote, to let me know what makes sense as a video format going forward. And with that smooth segue, let me continue to address some queries brought up in my Conor video. As usual, I will continue to use the appropriate video footage to try bridge the gap. Now, there's a difference between improbable versus illogical. Take this one for example by BJJ, who suggests a counter to Conor's framing is by feeling the touch, and an immediate spinning back fist to the side of the extended arm. This appears to be an outlandish idea. But that's the beauty of film analysis. If something actually worked in a real situation, no matter how crazy it sounds, you can't discount it as a possibility. The reality is, against a powerful counter-striker, spamming spinning back fists is a low percentage move. And BJJ realizes this. Turning away repeatedly opens you up to a counter-strike once someone gets a read on your game plan. I just wanted to highlight that as an example of improbably comment. BJJ, you're alright my homie. We tight. Another suggestion is to try grab the wrist when Conor extends his arm. Once you grab this wrist, you can pull Conor into you, and maybe even take him down with a throw. Now, this is difficult, as a wrist is a small target, and trying to grab this is low percentage. Also, Conor's balance will be backwards when he looks for the post. He will not be walking towards you, but trying to back out, or pivot out and counter. Even if you could grab his wrist, you are suggesting you will be able to pull him forward one-handed, in order to execute a throw. That being said, this suggestion is still somewhat reasonable, just low percentage. If someone lunges at you with an extended arm, a throw is possible. It's just that in the situation where Conor uses it, his balance won't be forward typically. What I cannot understand though, are the rebuttals that seem to defy logic and the laws of physics. It's almost as if these commentators went for a trial class at my former arch-nemesis, and quit after a week, before they could actually learn anything about grappling. In that short time however, they received a crash course on alternative astrophysics and the space-time continuum. To illustrate what I mean. One rebuttal I commonly see, is that framing won't work on someone trying to do upper body takedowns. To these commentators, upper body tie-ups are a separate type of technique from shots, and that Conor's framing is ill-suited to counter them. They further assert that I am mistaken, for suggesting that wrestlers using clinch throws should be in the same bucket as wrestlers who use shots. See, that is what I am dealing with here. Yes, upper body takedowns are different from shots, but they still require you to close the distance. Basic common sense tells you that if there's a physical barrier between two objects, an object cannot occupy the space that the barrier occupies. Slightly less extreme, but still misguided, is that if Chad Mendes was bigger, he would have been able to power past this frame. In other words, framing only worked because Chad was a midget. Another way of saying this, is that Nurmi is this 200-pound monster and by virtue of his size, he will bulldoze past the frame. Another variant, is by using unrelenting pressure, Nurmi can somehow muscle through the frame, and get a clinch or takedown. A frame, is one of the most powerful tools you have, when you are in a bad position in grappling or wrestling. No matter how strong you are not going to snap someone's arm in two, by pushing against a frame like a madman. If you have someone pinned to the fence, sure, framing probably will fail eventually. But out in the open, pushing against it hoping to eventually break your opponent is a fantasy. Alrighty, let me get into some actual answers. There are 3 reasonable points which I would like to address. The first one, is that leg kicks might be a good counter. Now this is reasonable, as Conor's right hand could be preoccupied tracking your upper body to post preemptively. This could interfere with his ability to jab from a distance, leaving him a sitting duck to leg kicks. Now the question is Nurmi the type of fighter to suddenly develop a kicking game? Listen to what his coach, Javier Mendez, says about kicks.
Kickboxing, he's still beginning pro level, but not high level. But he's an ever improving guy. He doesn't stop. I mean, no one ever seen him kick. But what did we see this time around? Kicking.
Indeed, kicking looks like something that could be frustrating. Whether Nurmi is likely to develop that skill to complement his wrestling though, remains to be seen. Another question asked was whether this touching could be used against someone with a longer reach. This might make things a little bit more risky, but it doesn't exclude the tactic. As mentioned previously, Conor can make contact at a variety of places. Touching the shoulder or neck isn't a must. Here you can see Conor is too far to post on the shoulder or neck. Instead, he reads Eddie's intention, through the contact he makes on his inner arm. Here, Conor only has contact with Chad's lead hand. This brief contact, is enough to warn him, of the impending pocket entry and level change. Keeping a hand out like this, is like reaching for punches, which is not always a great idea. This leaves your body exposed, and for a savvy opponent, is a window for body shots. Indeed, going to the body is an observation several of you have made in the comments. Especially body hooks. For those of you, who have been throwing Eddie under the bus for this fight, at least give him credit, that by the first round, he had realized what Conor was doing with his lead hand, and was already adjusting his tactics. After getting tagged stepping in with his overhand, Eddie started to realize Conor was leaving his body unprotected. Towards the end of round 1, Eddie changed tactics and started leading with body hooks as he came in. This immediately triggered a response from Conor. Notice how his lead hand pulls in to protect his body. Eddie continued the tactic, making Conor start to take it seriously, and take preemptive measures in the pocket. Eddie noticed this reaction, and started hooking to the head when he stepped in, trying to catch Conor while he pulled his arm in to protect his body. Why did it ultimately fail then? Conor started reading this, and protecting his body with his lead arm. Hooks are a short-range weapon, and Conor could rely on his footwork and guard to flee and protect himself. Because takedowns were not following up the hooks, Conor started countering with his left, feeling safe enough to not employ the frame with his right. Out of ideas once hooking wasn't viable. All the accumulated damage could also have interfered with his ability to think of a new plan. Nonetheless, Eddie went back to coming in with overhands and got countered and finished. Body hooking seems viable, but it has to be followed up with a plan C, and even a plan D, once Conor adjusts. Assuming Conor won't see all these small adjustments on the feet, isn't giving him enough credit. Alright. I think that's enough Q&A for this Conor study. I hope you have found some of these ruminations helpful. One final thought, calling fighters midgets or bums, misses the whole point of technique analysis. These aren't prediction videos, but merely studies on how the sport of MMA is evolving technically. I have no attachment to any fighter or any style of martial arts. But wait a second. Why am I fighting in these dungeons alone? More than 80% of you watching this, have had martial arts training. Teamwork makes the dream work. So suit up, and get down to those dungeons and start throwing leather. Till next time.